Hello and welcome to another episode of Rambling Weekly. This is the 86th one. Woo! And you can tell by the title, I'm talking about Icarus and that event, that tragedy. And I don't know, I think it'd be interesting to talk about it because, much like our evolution of idiomatic phrases, due to either different cultural attitudes, different thought processes. I think it'd be fun and interesting to dive into the dangers of the Icarian flight and kind of see how we could possibly learn from that, other than simply flying too close to the sun, because there's a little bit more to it than that, and I think we sometimes lose a lot of the messages in that. So I'm going to do what we normally do. So first off, take a break and we'll get into it. Stick around. Welcome back. That tune there is Meridian Child. That is from the Trials of Mana or Seiken Densetsu 3 soundtrack. It is by Hiroki Kikuta. Very interesting fellow. Seems like he very much has that attitude and gumption to go out there and do and tried to do that with Kodelka in the PS1 era and stuff like that. And it's always neat to see when people who are working in the different companies like Square Enix, or back then or even nowadays, where they're like, okay, we got this, but we're going to try to push forward and do more. So I always appreciate that in an individual. But how you doing? You doing well? It was at least in my area, probably for a lot of people in the States, it was a rather toasty week last week. I decided to wear a light kind of rain jacket, windbreaker thing all week, and people looked at me like I was a maniac, which that is a fair thing to do. I kind of did it because I was like, you know what? I have this big jug of water. I'm jumping in and out of a vehicle that's not like, it can be AC'd and stuff. So it was not as difficult as it could have been. If I was working a lot more outdoors, then I wouldn't have done that, obviously. But since it was kind of like, I might be out for a 20-minute stretch. Sure, I'll manage. So, yeah, that's it. The end. Let's see. But yeah, other than that, for work. Got to go to a wedding in the family yesterday, so that was something. It was nice to see family members I hadn't seen in like nearly 20 years. So it's funny because I recognized most of them, but they would always be like, "Do you know who I am?" It's like, yes, I know who you are, but uh, it's just it's just kind of funny. So, and they're like, "Oh, I hadn't seen you in a while." And I was like, "Yeah, it's been a hot minute," but that it is kind of it's kind of the fun and interesting thing with family, right? It's that as long as you don't have any, and even if you do, perhaps that long will kind of simmer it, but if you got bad blood or something. But if you don't, and it's like, you kind of like with friends that you haven't seen in a while, you just kind of pick up where you last left off. Um, that's something I it's nice. It's as weird as it can be, or just you can kind of be like, oh, I wish be able to hang out more or something, but you know, I've gotten into the habit now. When somebody asks, how you doing? A lot of people say they're busy, and I do too. But I've kind of gotten into this habit now that instead of simply saying I'm busy, I'm like, like everybody else, I'm just busy. To acknowledge that everybody else is busy. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just pretending they're busy. I don't know. But yeah. So that was nice. That was good. I've been playing a little bit of the remastered Dark Souls, so that's been something. I played it for a bit and then stopped after a while, and I was just like, I can see why people like this, because this is kind of like really the second time playing something like this. I'm like, I can see why people like it, but I'm kind of not really feeling it. I'm like, and then for whatever reason, I was just like, you know what? I'll give it another playthrough, and just started back at the beginning and going through. And for those who do know, basically, I've rang the 2 bells. That's where I'm at. I have done that. It hasn't been as stressful. Like the one fight that I remember first time playing through, because I played for like 60 hours, and I was just kind of moseying about, lost, not knowing what I was doing, like as you should. But I the first time playing through the Capra demon in that stupid little alleyway with the stairs, I hated that fight so much. Second time I played it, I think I died like 4 or 5 times, and I was like, hey, this isn't so bad. It was still a little bit. I was a little like, I got lucky with beating it, because it was like he kept on hitting me with this overhanded, like, kind of whatever this is. And I was trying to like be up on the stairs just enough to just kind of like poke at him. It was not nearly as successful as I was hoping, but still ended up beating it. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I've not had nearly as much trouble with the bosses this time around compared to the first time playing, which makes sense, right? Like, you've even if you haven't, I imagine if somebody went back and played something like that, if they haven't played it for 4 or 5 years, they might have still a little bit of that hidden memory in there, and be like, oh yes, that's kind of my knack for playing something or doing something, is that I tend to be able to retain it, and just kind of gets shuffled to the back of the brain and just stays there until it's needed, and then all of a sudden, it's like the memes of like, the dad who's got that little plank of wood that you don't know what he's got it for, but he saved it for something. 23 years later, he will use it. That's kind of the same thing. That's just I've got this skill here that whenever I get back to playing it or something, it'll just kind of come forward and be like, okay, I know what to do. I can do the thing. So, but that I haven't really done terribly much else. I've admittedly I've kind of been taking it easy, which is not good on my part, because I have a few goals that I wish to reach. I'm about halfway through writing for the next part for, well, maybe a third actually. Now that I think about it, for the next part for the Fire Emblem, part 3 for Genealogy of the Holy War. Um, it's probably about a third or so. Right. I've gotten that to there. I've gotten through the 2 chapters I'm going to talk about, chapters 4 and 5. I just need to continue writing on it. And then I don't know if there's much else. That's really about the extent of that. I haven't really read anything this week, and yeah. Bleh. Don't know what that was about. Bleh. Bleh. Goofy Dracula. Yeah, pretty ho hum, doing the work. I guess in other exciting news, I'm contemplating paying something fully off or paying a sizable chunk off. So, I mean, that's the amount of excitement I got going on. So, yeah. But we're going to take a break, and then we're going to get into the topic. So stick around. Welcome back. That tune there is Powell. And I didn't really say anything about Meridian Child. 2 things. One, it's got this little start that you kind of, okay, all right. And then all of a sudden, about 30 seconds in to Meridian Child, it starts to get very triumphant and stuff, and I really like that. Powell may be my favorite tune, or at least it's in the top handful of them. I just really like it. It's just a nice. I believe it's a dark forested theme or something. I don't know. It has been a long time since I've played through the game fully. I'm 15 years, 17 years, and I remember I dabbled a little bit in the 3D remake version, but I don't really remember that one so well. I like the game. It's a little on the easy side, I'll say that. I know that Sushi and I have talked about possibly doing a podcast for it or something. My biggest thing with that is it's because of and if you don't know this, you pick between 6 different characters. And depending on that first character you pick, which is the main character, there are 3 different final bosses. So, not only do you have all 6 of those different stories, but you have all those different bosses and stuff. Because I don't quite recall how much if you go through it with, like, if you pick whatever the 3 characters you pick, if you go through the other stories for the other 2, and how much it intertwines and tangles and stuff. I think it does, but like I said, it's been a long time, and I only played it the one time through proper. I like it. I did enjoy it, but it was a bit easy. A little bit easier than the second one, which at the end had what was that, guy's naval area or something, where it's like, hey, surprise, everything will kill you in like 2 hits. If a hit, oh, you need to learn how to cast magic. Surprise. And then it really bogged down the game. Yeah, so That was it. Okay, topic time. Let's talk about the topic. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about this bit, and I'm going to borrow from Ovid, Metamorphosis, just a little bit here, so you can kind of get an idea for it. So, when I say the flight of Icarus, the Icarian flight, what images pop into your head on that? I'll give you a moment to think about this. I imagine you always get the idea of the notion of flying too close to the sun, kind of like what I had said at the opening of the recording. Anyway, that is our general thought on it, is flying too close to the sun, being too hubristic, and all that sort of fun. But take a snippet of it right here. I'm going to talk about it, and this is from. So I have the books of Ovid, like a translation of Ovid, but I am too lazy to dig through it to find the exact pages for it. But it's in I think part 8, and let's see here. And this is how it goes. So this kind of translation of it, this is something I found on Wikisource. So take it as you will. For he puts feathers in a row, beginning with the small ones, and the shorter ones following the long ones, so that you should think it had grown on an incline, in the same way that an old countryman's pipe gradually builds up with reeds of different lengths. Then he binds the middle feathers with thread, and the bottom feathers with wax, and then he bends his creation with a slight curve in such a way that it truly mimics a real bird. The boy Icarus was standing together with his father, unaware that he was touching his own peril. Now, with a beaming smile, was catching feathers, which the wandering air had moved. Then, with his thumb, he was softening the yellow wax, and with his play was impeding on the miraculous work of his father. After the finishing touch had been placed on the work, the craftsman balanced himself with twin wigs, and suspended his body in the moving air. I warn you to fly in the middle course, Icarus. If you go too low, a wave will weigh you down. If you go too low, a wave will weigh down the feathers. If you go too high, the fire from the sun will burn them. Fly between them. I order you not to look at Boots, or Hellas, or the strict sword of Orion. With me leading, seize the way. I mention that as I could certainly do better with my reading, but a couple things about that. So yeah, we always take generally the idea is about how, oh yes, don't be too hubristic, flying towards the sun, because that is what eventually Icarus does. He flies too close to the sun, and then he goes and careens into the water and dies. Spoiler alert for a couple 1,000-year-old story, but the things mentioned in here, one in particular is the exact inversion of it, where he says, if you go too low, a wave will weigh down the feathers. And that's something I think is a consideration that we need to take as people, as people, ourselves, our friends, our family, coworkers, people that just the willingness that we tend to have to fly too low. That is also a danger, and that is something I think that we have carelessly stepped into. There's a lot of people who have willingly just checked out and think that by somehow cutting off their nose to spite the face will be like, this is what it is. There's that Oh, I'm trying to think. Let's see. Here. There is it's not less. I was hoping that it would be a little bit more defined, but there's an African proverb that says a child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I think we're seeing a lot of that where in people's inaction, unwillingness, and just general apathy, those sorts of actions are allowing this fire to spread, and they're fine with that because they think, we're not scratching my back. Why should I scratch yours? Much like the Greek proverb of, that you. I'm paraphrasing it, but that you. A society is a healthy society. A society is doing well when the elderly are planting trees whose shade they'll never feel. And I get it. I get the this attitude of seeing what some may consider, oh, these people before us had such a wonderful time of things, and they're so great, they're so comfy, they were able to just party and whatnot, and then they got to do all this, and then we get stuck with nothing, and just and that attitude, and then just be like, well, fine, I'll just let it burn. They were unwilling to give me a better lot in life, and so we'll just go that route. And I get that attitude. Like my parents, they were very loving to me, and I know that for a lot that's even a lot. But they were also not very good with giving advice, we'll say. Especially when you're telling like your 7-8-year-old, just do what makes you happy, which doesn't really, there's not a lot of guidance, we'll say. They're very hippie spirit. My parents were, still are, but they I could easily be like, well, because of those attitudes, because of what they had done one way or the other, and didn't give me this, that, and whatnot, I could sit there and be, for lack of a better word, petulant, and just be like, this is unfair. They got these things, I didn't get those things. I get it. It is an easy trap we fall into to want to blame others, especially our parents, for the situation that we are brought into. And some of them may certainly deserve all the rebuke that somebody wants to give them, but I feel that is, I don't want to say that it's unfair, but I guess the best way I can kind of think of it as attitude is like, who are you to judge? I'm very much of the mindset of like, run your race. Don't be trying to judge somebody else, and fault them for whatever grievances may have happened, especially in the past. I think it's important to try to allow somebody the chance to show that whatever errors they may have committed, that they can not just simply fix those errors, because I think there's a difference between fixing and then learning and then kind of building from there. Because I think that's a problem we have too, is that we want to fix. We gotta fix the problem. We gotta fix it. We're gonna try it, and it's not a simple. Okay, we just do the thing and it's done. Ta-da! But yeah, so that's a big like neon light blinking of, hey, this is the whole, flying too low. We easily think of flying too high, and there are some people where you're just kind of like, okay, we're wait, what are we thinking? Yeah, and you could think of the Roman everything in moderation quote also kind of fits in there. However, I also want to touch on something else here, is that Daedalus, Icarus's father, he's this great genius who creates all these different things in story. He builds the labyrinth that the Minotaur dwells in. He just, I think he's got some other stuff. Did he do the super duper death ray lens or something like that? I don't quite recall. That might not have been him. More importantly, the thing is that that part that I started at talks about him putting in the work, and I get it. Icarus is a boy, but I'll read this part over again. The boy Icarus was standing together with his father, unaware that he was touching his own peril. Now, with a beaming smile, was catching feathers, while the wandering air had moved. Then, with his thumb, he was softening the yellow wax, and with his play was impeding on the miraculous work of his father. Boys are, children, girls as well. They are allowed to play. I mean, we all should do a little bit of play. All work and no play make human a dull species. but I think this highlights the other aspect of this, is that Daedalus is just simply telling him, hey, don't do these things, stick with me and whatnot. But I've had this talk with a few other people before, just like, especially how, here's the parent and then the kids, and they're just so different and whatnot, and or just neighbors and family or friends and all this sort of fun stuff. We all have that black box within us that we may or may not be aware of, and even if we're aware of, there's just things in there that there's mechanisms in there that tick and turn, and we don't really know how they'll come to be when we are presented with certain things. Not always, but sometimes there might be just, you've got something pop up, and then all of a sudden you ping off of it and just go in a wildly different direction than what you were expecting. So that's a problem there. Is Icarus is not having that. He's just kind of being told these things and not experiencing stuff. He's not putting in any work. Now I wonder, had Daedalus, instead of just allowing his son to play, had him help with the work to understand that this is what it was, to be able to test these things and to just kind of, because that's also part of it as well. After the finishing touch had been placed on the work, the craftsman balanced himself with twin wings and suspended his body in the moving air. So, yeah. That's the other thing I want to bring up about that. It's like, Icarus was really, was he really ready for that? I mean, just going by the Ovid story in the translation and whatnot. mind you, going through it, it's going to be a quicker endeavor. But I think that it's perhaps one of those. I mean, what makes a good story is that you can parse out a lot of different interpretations, or morals, and ideas for it. And here, I think of it with this one. I think of Icarus's complete inexperience of not having this work and whatnot, and playing and just kind of do, and then when situation comes to be, he's not ready for the task, and so kind of goes beyond what is there, and in doing so completely just loses himself. Now some people will also take a very different approach to that. If we wanted to go into it, think of the movie Troy, or just any of the old Homeric, going for glory and all that sort of stuff. We remember Icarus's name, but Daedalus doesn't. A lot of people don't, I think, know of Daedalus. I mean, there's probably a good chunk of people who are aware of the name, but I don't. At least in the States, I don't think it's quite as known. It's almost like Sisyphus. Sisyphus is an easy one to remember, to some degree. Pushing up that boulder. We can understand that. We work Monday through Friday, or maybe Tuesday through Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. We get it. We go and push the rock up and fall back down. Push the rock up. We get that. We kind of forget about Tantalus and the butchery that he did, and he's not allowed to take a sip of the water. And then when he finally does get a sip of that water, it makes things that much worse. But yeah, I think that's, I guess, where I'm going at with that other point for Icarus is that it is important to also perhaps you maybe a little less play, a little bit more work when that comes to be. But also, Daedalus, you really should have been trying better to give him the heads up and be like, hey, son, kind of a big deal. We need to get out of here. Minos is a jerk, and we need to fly. So, but I don't know. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. When I was listening to a few different podcast things over the week and during work, and they had mentioned, because they were talking about like Alexander and Olympias and Philip, and mentioned Icarus and stuff, and it's like, you know what, I think it'd be fun to kind of talk a little bit about that, because we always have the talk about thinking about going too high. I think also not serving yourself and flying too low is also a very perilous danger that we ought to be a bit more cognizant of, that we don't tend not to be. We just like, oh, whatever, I'll just take it easy, I'll coast. So that's it. That's what I got for the topic. So we're going to take a break, get into a quote, and then be on our merry way. So stick around. Welcome back. That tune there is Swivel. I like the little knocking behind it and stuff. It's got this, again, I get imagery of like forests and stuff, but I feel like a lot of Seiken areas had forests and stuff. Partially because I've played Secret of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 2, a little bit more recently, as in like 8 years ago. But always when it would go into like, what is that, mode 7, when you're getting shot out of a cannonball, or when you're on Flamey and stuff and you're flying around, there was a lot of forest in that game. I think there's still a lot of forest in that. Also, there's the mana tree kind of thing that's sort of a point in the game. It's kind of important. Anyway, yeah. So that's another tune that I really enjoy from the game. I did not put it on for the last song, but I'll say this: the third, because the final boss comes in 3 parts, each different form of the fight, each different final. Of the 3 final bosses, each one has 3 forms, and there's 3 different songs that play for it. Sort of, it's very minuscule or minimal on the first one, and then it kind of builds up for part 2. Sacrifice part 3. Good stuff, great stuff, fantastic stuff. I think, mind you, Powell is probably a little bit more well known. I think for all of these I chose songs that were not battle themes. Not to say that the Seiken Densetsu 3's, Trials of Mana's battle themes are bad or anything. I was like, we'll go a little different route. We'll do more of the traveling overworld themes. Anyways, to stick with Metamorphosis, Ovid, this one in particular, I enjoy. As wave is driven by wave, and each pursued pursues the wave ahead, so time flies on and follows, flies and follows. Always, forever and new. What was before is left behind. What never was is now, and every passing moment is renewed. Very enjoyable stuff. Good stuff. Kind of actually makes me want to reread it. It's been a while since I've read it, so it'd be good to give that another go. But yeah, that's that. I mean, there's also in there as well, just throw it out there, God himself helps those who dare. It's a thread that's been carried on. Like, we've got God helps those who helps themselves, which is very similar to a Spanish phrase. I'll bring it up. I don't quite remember it is a Dios rogando y con el mazo dando, to God praying and to the mallet using. So that's I believe that's like the more literal translation of it, but that also kind of goes into that. And I think that's to boil it down even further is that you make your own luck, sort of thing. And I guess luck in this sense more so your own fortune, your own situation, your own circumstance, and that by being active, being proactive, tends to help your cause. People like to talk about manifesting and speaking into existence and stuff. I think there's, I don't know. At least with my life, it feels like the universe doesn't quite want to hear what I have to say. Well, it wants to see me actually do the thing. So, but yeah, that's all I got for today. So thanks for watching. Enjoy your day, weekday, weeknight, weekend, and everything in between. Outro tune is Innocent Sea. Very melancholy tune, but I like it. It's a good one. It's enjoyable. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing it. I mean, I say that all the time. That's a good one. Here's some bad music. One of these days, I'll do here's an awful tune that I just think's absolutely abysmal. Enjoy. But today is not that day. That's it. Later.